Welcome to Project Torque. My name is Zodi, and thank you for tuning into our next video. And also thank you for subscribing for those of you that did. This is going to be a very quick review of my own car, the Rapid, which I've owned for a bit. I'm going to try and differentiate the way we do it. It's not going to be the usual kind of review that you've seen on YouTube. We're not gonna go very much in depth, but I'm gonna talk about my experience with all the cars that I've owned so far, what I did with those cars, and of course, what I'm planning to do with this Rapid. So without further ado, let me talk about the first car that I owned, and I'm sure many of you watching have probably owned that one as well. It was the good old Maruti Suzuki WagonR. No pun intended. We all know the WagonR is our typical family vehicle. It is meant to transport people from point A to point B. So it's a people mover. It's not really meant to be a car that should be modified, tuned, if I may say. But then I've always had this passion in my head where it doesn't matter what car you own. It's all about your connection with the vehicle, how you drive it, how you treat it, and in turn, how the car treats you. So when I bought the WagonR back in 2014, that's exactly what I had in mind, and that's exactly what I did. I tuned it up. I tuned it up bad, so much so that it was pretty much illegal to be driven on city roads, on regular streets. I had forged pistons. I had bought bearings, close ratio gearboxes, the works, free flow exhaust all the way from the exhaust headers all the way till the end can. I pretty much never had an end can, to be honest. It was just make do sort of a end can, just so that I could do my way with the cops. But yeah, I mean, she was incredible. I owned her for almost 5 years. I tuned her, in fact, after I had owned her for 3 years. I didn't want to mess with that stock way it was manufactured for 3 years, but then I did eventually. By the time I had let go of my WagonR, she was churning almost 85 to 88 horses at the crank, which translated to about 80 odd horsepower on the wheels. She was quite zippy. She weighed around 700 kilos. So she was very zippy on the streets. It was a very fun to drive car. As time progressed, obviously, I was working in the corporate world. I still am. But as time progressed, I had to obviously drive to work. And the place where I was living in Delhi, I'm from Delhi, by the way. The place where I was living in had horrible traffic. And I had to commute in the worst of the hours that one can imagine. I had to drive to work at 9 in the morning, drive back around 5:36 in the evening, so you can imagine the traffic. It doesn't matter, in fact, what city you live in. These are the worst hours you want to drive. So I eventually decided I'd keep my wagon because I had put so much effort on it, but I wanted something which is a little more easier to drive, especially in those hours. So I went for an automatic, of course. And I didn't want to go for just any automatic. I mean, we all know there are a lot of options out there when you want to go for a car which is automatic, and more so if you want a used car, pre-owned, pre-loved vehicle, as we all motorheads call them. So I basically got myself a 2012 Skoda Laura 2.0 TDI automatic, 6-speed DSG, and I'm sure you all would agree it's a hoot to drive. You put your pedal to the metal and it shoots. It's a slingshot when it comes to the way it's tuned stock, by factory. The way it translates the power onto those transmission gears, and the way that power ultimately translates onto the road, with the stock rubber that you get with the car is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. I owned my Laura for I think a year and a half, until something very uneventful happened. My Laura basically caught fire while standing still. No fault of my own. I wasn't driving it. I had parked it in one of these offbeat parking locations outside my office in Delhi, and something happened, and it just spontaneous combustion, right? So I lost my Laura then, and that really put me down. I had very long, very robust plans to tune up my Laura. Being the engine that it had, 2.0 TDI, we all know it's a modifier's wet dream, as we call it. It's very potent. It's very capable in terms of what all you can throw in at it. You can absolutely go crazy with replacing the turbo. Go up a couple of notches with a Garrett turbo. So that was the Laura. After that mishap happened, I was not in India then. I had moved out. I was in Istanbul for a bit. Then I had moved to Dubai for I think a year and a half. Ultimately, when COVID hit, I came back to India with my wagon. Of course, I always had that. I drove the wagon for almost 6-7 odd months until COVID had passed by in the way that it did. God help everybody's souls who were lost due to COVID. Eventually, when COVID started phasing out, I realized the need of another car that I could own, that I could modify, because I had absolutely reached the peak with what I could do with that wagon. When I say the peak, there was nothing else I could do, absolutely nothing, besides doing an engine swap. I didn't want to do that because obviously I'd want to make sure that I can replace it as well. Eventually I started planning, thinking about what should be my next car. And that's when I sort of decided it has to be a Skoda. It has to be a Skoda or a Volkswagen. Has to be one of the VAC cars. For those who have driven a VAC car, they know what I mean when I say this. Once you've driven a VAC car, once you're behind the wheel of a VAC car, you can't go back. You cannot drive a Honda. You can't drive a Korean car. They just don't give you that pleasure behind the wheel as a VAC car does, right? So it had to be a Skoda. They were not making the Laura anymore. The Octavia was a little out of my budget, let's be honest. So I decided my best option was the Rapid, and that's what I have right now. I love it. I absolutely adore it. It's a hoot to drive like any other VAC car that you can imagine. When I got the Rapid, I started wondering, before I got it, in fact, I started wondering which variant should I really go for, because back then when the Rapid was available, it had quite a few variants, right? It had the Monte Carlo, it had the Style, and of course it had lower end variants, but it also had this, it had the Onyx, as we all know it. It was a limited edition variant with a lot of the features that you got with the Style variant, but none of the BS, right? When I say BS, I wasn't really looking for a whole lot of luxury elements. I wasn't looking for a usual circular steering wheel. I wanted something performance oriented. So the Onyx had a flat bottom steering wheel, which is great. The Onyx did not have that dreaded Android audio unit, the stereo unit that the Style variant and Monte Carlo they do, and it's horrible really. I like this old school. I'm an old school person. I like things that move, that crank. You get that tactile feeling when you move a jog dial. So the Onyx has it. So it has that head unit that supports Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and it also has those dials, that feel-good factor that you get when you twist the volume dial and the audio track change dial. So that's when I got the Onyx. There's a lot that I've done with this car. We'll talk more as we continue. I'll talk in depth about my car, but that was like a quick rundown on how it all started for me personally, and why did I eventually decide to go for the Rapid. And now we'll learn more about what I'm planning to do with this car. So that's one phase of the kind of videos you can expect from Project Torque, which is going to be my Rapid, right? And then of course we're going to follow through with a whole lot of content coming through, specifically with cars that you and I would like to see, reviewing them, knowing more about them, knowing more about the automotive landscape, the tuning landscape specifically in North India. It's massive. It's a hit down south, but so it is in up north as well. But there's probably not a whole lot that people know about, about the tuning scene up near in Delhi NCR. So I'm gonna focus a lot on that, and stay tuned. We'll continue. Skoda Rapid was launched in India back in November 2011. Back then, it was one of those few cars that was available that had that robust build quality that it was known for, the safety, and of course the drivability. When it comes to drivability, we all know the engines that Skoda offered was extremely potent. The gearboxes were very slick, well weighted. They used to clog into their slots very easily, and of course, the travel was not very long. So those are some of the reasons why Skodas used to sell as they did, and the Rapid was no different. It sold more than a lot of other sedans back then. As you can see, in terms of design, back in 2011, all the way till date, the Rapid's design has not changed a lot. It still has those clean, robust, if I can say, masculine lines that, as you can see, it starts all the way from the front quarter panel, runs all the way through the length of the doors and ends with a crease right here towards the end, and goes up, thereby making sure it gives you that European touch. And you can tell it's a European car just by the first glance you put at it. If I talk about this current generation Rapid, which is now unfortunately discontinued, I think it was discontinued last year. This has a very timeless design, regardless of if it is available right now or not. You'd never feel that the design is old, it's outdated. It'll always feel fresh, as if it has just rolled out of the showroom. The tail lamps, as you can see, if I can talk about them a little bit, they are conventional. They're not LEDs. They're halogens, but then they definitely do their job really well. There's no trouble in terms of illumination, at least from the tail lamps. Everything else is very sharp and straight. It's very straightforward. There isn't a lot of experimentation with this car, as we have seen with a lot of other brands. You can tell it's European descent and it's European DNA right away. And if we talk about the rest of the design elements of this car, specifically this variant, this is the Onyx variant. Now this sits right between the Ambition and the Style / Monte Carlo variants. The reason why I personally picked this variant is because this fits perfectly with the kind of design that I was looking for. It is not very loud. It doesn't have a lot of chrome, which is personally something that I don't really like. It has picked up bits and pieces from the Monte Carlo and the Style variant that I personally like. For example, as you can see, the rims that we have here, these are the same rims as you get from the Monte Carlo and the Style variant. But these are not chrome, these are not gunmetal, not silver, these are black. These are exactly the color you want them to be for a performance sedan that it is. If I talk about some of the other design elements that I personally like, now as I said, this is not an in-depth review as you've seen in other channels. This is my reason. This is a video that covers my reasons for purchasing this car. If we talk about the other aspects of this vehicle, from the front, if you look at the front of the vehicle, this has extremely sharp lines. You can, again, no matter what side, what angle you're looking at on this car, you can instantly tell it's a European car. The way the headlights have been designed, the sharp creases, the sharp angles that cover the headlamp all across, you can tell it's designed for speed, it is designed for performance, and aerodynamics is basically what was in the mind of the designer when this was placed on that drawing board, right? The traditional classic Skoda honeycomb grille or butterfly grille, not honeycomb but Skoda butterfly grille that it offers. I have added some of my design cues to it. I've slapped on the VRS badge. I've actually not kept it stock. It's modified in terms of its performance. So I seriously feel there should be a VRS variant, and since there isn't from the factory, I've made this my own VRS. This absolutely has that Skoda logo, that classic flying arrow logo that indicates that it is built for speed, for drivability, to be able to kind of hit its target whenever you push the pedal to the metal. This is basically the new Skoda design logo versus what you and I have seen in the past, which is that green colored logo. I personally feel this looks better than the old one. In terms of this car's performance, stock Skoda gives you 110 horsepower on the wheels and 175 Newton meters of torque. I personally felt that wasn't enough for the capacity of the engine that was provided by Skoda. It's a 1 liter TSI engine with a 6-speed manual gearbox. Internationally, this engine produces way more horsepower, way more torque, and it's way more drivable. Of course, Skoda had to detune its capacity and its performance, its numbers for Indian conditions because of the grade of fuel that we get here, the kind of atmosphere we are in terms of the air quality and everything. It obviously would not be able to sustain that performance for a long time. So basically what I did with the car was I got her remapped. I'll explain more about what a remapping does. But if I were to show you the internals, as I explained, this is a 1 liter, it's a 1000cc TSI turbocharged stratified injection motor, which means it is of course not naturally aspirated. It's got forced induction, or it's got turbocharging as we call it. The turbocharger sits right underneath this area right here. Fundamentally, what does a turbocharger do? It basically pulls in all the exhaust gases that go out of the exhaust manifold, forces it back in through the air filter, back into the combustion chamber, thereby giving you more air pressure, more boost. And obviously, because it's a turbocharger that works on the exhaust gases, it completely depends on the engine RPM that you're running the car at. Depending on the engine RPM and the turbo spooler, it is designed to kickstart and basically kick through that boost after a certain RPM. The good part about this motor stock is the turbo kicks in at a very low 1700, 1600 RPM. You'll start feeling that boost. But then, in my opinion, 110 horsepower was definitely not enough. So I basically got her remapped. Now, remapping, what does that do? There is this unit that every car has. It's called the ECU. That's basically the engine control unit. What this basically does is it's a computer that tells how much of fuel and how much of air should go into the combustion chamber and what kind of mixture should that be. Depending on what goes in, that would decide the power that goes out of the engine, right? And it does a whole lot of other things. It controls the fuel sequence, it controls the way the throttle body remains open, it controls the valve timings, a whole lot of other stuff the ECU is actually responsible for. So remapping the ECU basically means the software that has been pre-installed by the manufacturer is tweaked. There are certain parameters that the manufacturer feeds into the software that goes into that ECU, this computer, that is basically designed with economy in mind, of course, number one, because that's apparently a priority out here. So economy is number one. Drivability is probably second or probably third down the list. But yeah, primarily it's meant for economy, sustenance, and all that good stuff. Remapping basically tweaks that software in that ECU to change those parameters, right? When I say change those parameters, it is now designed to pull in more air. It is now designed to get that turbo to pull in at a higher RPM than stock. It is designed to pull in a little more fuel. It will keep the throttle body open a little longer, a little wider versus stock. Now, you may start to wonder, if we mess with these stock parameters, it may affect the engine life, it may affect the engine sustainability, which is true to some extent, which is why it is very important for you to know what kind of remapping software are you installing in a vehicle like this, in a very capable, potent vehicle like this. There are a whole lot of brands out there. I'm not going to name any of them, of course, nothing against them, but it is very important to know the parameters that this new software will feed in. Is that safe? Is that sustainable enough for this engine to last as long as it has been designed to? Keeping all these factors in mind, I basically went for the TVS engineering remap. It's a stage 2 remap that I've got on this car. Stage 2 essentially means it is designed to get that turbo to spool on a little higher RPM, of course, than stage 1, and of course definitely more than stock. It's designed to pull in more air, more fuel, at the same time remaining within those safety margins. The other reason why I went for TVS is because TVS Engineering is one of those few companies that manufactures remapping softwares specifically for the Volkswagen Auto Group cars, or VAG cars. They do it for Audi, they do it for Lamborghinis, they do it for Volkswagens, of course, and Skodas. So that's really the reason why I went with the TVS. The other reason is These parameters that TVS feeds in, these are actually as per international standards. What I mean by that is this engine, which is basically built on European standards, now being sold in India, which has been detuned, is now unlocked to perform at its European potential, European counterparts potential. So the amount of horsepower that she is making right now, she's about 142, 143 horsepower on the wheels and about 250 odd Newton meters of torque on the wheels. Now these are numbers that its European counterparts are producing at the moment, right? So that means those cars are equally sustainable. They have the same amount of warranty, same amount of drivability, which is what I'm getting out of this car. So we are not going beyond the safety margins. We are not doing a remap that's making a 1 liter engine. So you can imagine a 1 liter engine is basically the size of a juice box, right? A juice box of 1 liter. We're not taking it beyond its potential. It's churning safe amount of power, and I think 144 horsepower is good enough for this car's weight. She weighs about 1080, 1100 k's curb. So if you do the math, if you do the power to weight ratio, I think she's good enough. What else have I done personally? As you all would agree, and if you're a Volkswagen or a Skoda owner, you would know the stock Illumination is absolute crap. Pardon my French, but they definitely have capable projector units, but the bulbs that are provided by the company, which are just simple run-of-the-mill halogen bulbs, they're horrible in terms of illumination. So I had to get the illumination upgraded. So I basically got herself HID bulbs to go into these low beam projectors, and I got LED bulbs to go into the high beam reflectors. If we talk about the company that I got these units from, these are Ozum. As you can see, these are manufactured in Germany, so they're obviously built as per German standards. So the HIDs, the LEDs, they're both Ozum, and I think they do a fantastic job. They do a brilliant job in terms of illumination. I'm getting at least 80 to 90% more illumination on the streets in the night, with these versus stock. So that's always a good thing. You see, when your car has increased horsepower, increased torque, the next most important thing that you should do when you modify your car is increase its stopping power, right? Everything else is secondary. I feel the looks, the aesthetics, they really don't matter as long as your performance matrices are in place. So what I did to make that happen was I basically got the stock rotors, the discs, replaced with Brembo drilled rotors. Now these are, as you know it, if you're an automobile enthusiast, you know Brembos are the best in the world when it comes to manufacturing rotors. They obviously manufacture carbon ceramic brakes. They know the works when it comes to stopping power. So basically got myself some really well manufactured, good quality drilled rotors from Brembo. And to make these discs work, I basically got Brembo pads as well. These are performance brake pads by Brembo. In terms of my review with and how good these are, the discs are great. Of course, they dissipate more heat because they're drilled versus ventilated. And obviously, when you're stopping from extremely high speeds to a dead halt, they do their job well. But the pads are, I would say, not the best, because the material used on these pads are not soft enough. They're not grippy enough. So they definitely last longer. Again, just Brembo's way of manufacturing something specifically for India and Indian conditions. They definitely do the job well because of these rotors. But if we were to use these pads on your stock discs, they probably wouldn't be as good. They wouldn't be worth the money that you spend on them. So I would always recommend getting EBCs, EBC yellow stuff brake pads. They're really manufactured well. They've got a soft compound in terms of the material that they use for those pads. So those EBCs combined with these rotors, would work as a charm. They would give you stopping power like none other. So yeah, so that's basically my my current upgrade with this. Next in line, I've got a few things that I have planned. Of course, as any other car in India, the rear brakes are drums. They are not discs. I really feel they should have included rear discs when a car like the Toyota Yaris, which is not even close to the power that this car generates, offers rear disc brakes. So this is something that I have in mind, that my next upgrade or next modification will be swapping these stock drum units with discs. It's not a very troublesome task. It's very easy. It's basically lift and shift, they'll basically remove the stock drum unit, and because this car is available internationally, obviously with rear discs, that part, that SKU was imported. They slap that on after removing this, and that's it. So that's my next upgrade. Apart from that, I do have plans to lower her, and of course to get that handling on the streets, to get that nimble drivability. It is essential that she rides on better rubber, she rides lower, and she rides wider, right? That stance really matters. So I am planning to lower her. I'm not really sure if it should be MTS techniques, or should it be IBACs, or should it be Cobras. I'm gonna test all these three out. Be sure to watch out for those videos when we do that testing. And of course, after she's lowered, I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to obviously upsize the rims to lighter rims. Hopefully Lenzos, Jaeger Dynas, or Project Ds. I really like Project Ds personally. She's running at the moment 16-inch rims, so I'm going to upscale to 17. That's what I'm planning. I don't think for a sedan this size you should go beyond 17, because the moment you take it up by 2 notches, which is 18 inches, you lose that comfort that this car is designed to deliver. So I think 17-inch rims are good enough, with of course better rubber. These are Goodyears. They're not bad. I wouldn't call them bad, but obviously they're not good enough anymore because of that increased power and stopping capability. So I'm going to get better rubbers, probably Pirellis or Michelin's PS4s. Let's see. But again, every time we're going to test something out, you'll see videos coming out on our channel. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned to what we have to offer. Apart from that, aesthetically, I haven't really done a whole lot in terms of modifying it for its performance capabilities. I've slapped on this spoiler, quote unquote. It doesn't really spoil anything. It doesn't add to any performance gains for this vehicle. It just looks cool in my opinion. But eventually, maybe when I make it more track spec, more than street spec as she's right now, after she's lowered and everything, I'm going to probably slap on some better spoilers that does add that performance advantage, in terms of downforce, reducing drag, and so on and so forth. Thank you for watching this video. I know I probably wasn't the best. I was trying to be extremely accurate as I could be, but please, please be sure to like, comment on anything that you feel we should do, that we should be better at, and don't forget to subscribe. And please stay tuned for more videos coming your way, not only of my own Rapid, but of course a lot of other cars that have been launched. The Slavia is here, the Virtus is just launched today. Of course, I'm going to do the Gorkha as well, one of my favorites. So stay tuned for a lot of more exciting videos coming your way. Signing out for today, this is Zodi. You've been watching Project Torque. Thank you very much.